Бандера герой для какого-то процента украинцев. И это нормально, и это классно. Это один из тех людей, который защищал свободу Украины. Да.
The minister, Hector McNeill, told Parliament that the Ukrainians had been screened twice before and that no war criminals had been found.
Hector McNeill was either being deliberately economical with the truth, or in unparliamentary language, lying, or else he had been fooled by the Ukrainians. In either case, what we now know about the division's history suggests that his reply is worthless.
The Home Office has confirmed that Hector McNeill's answer is still official government policy today.
It is quite wrong to insist on the kind of reports that were created immediately after the war in those chaotic conditions as still being valid.
The historical record does not reveal precisely why the British Prime Minister was so generous to the Ukrainian division. There is some evidence that other agencies had an interest in their arrival.
The period from the division surrender until the division was eventually brought back to England is extremely murky. I know for a fact from the people that I have spoken to, a number were trained by Western intelligence agencies, be them American or British, for clandestine operations to take place behind Soviet lines in the immediate post-war period.
And these people had been former members of the Gnisha division?
Yes, indeed they had. That was the basis for them being selected. No question about that whatsoever.
By the time the Ukrainians arrived in the United Kingdom, the British government was fed up with trying war criminals.
Interesting piece of information that it starts to put pieces into place for me. I have been for a long time researching World War II and trying to understand why it is that we are now enemies with our allies. I cannot get my head around it, but now all of a sudden I'm starting to see a clearer picture. All those millions of lives were lost for nothing. Let me explain. MI6's CIA, with their lust for taking out the Soviet Union, utilised members of the 14th SS Waffen Regiment, sent them back into Ukraine to fight and kill Soviets. When the Soviet Union took all over the place, they went underground, but their hatred and their ideology didn't. Instead, it fermented amongst the communities within the Western Ukrainian area, not the Russian area, in the Western Ukrainian area. But soon, like anything else after 1989, it spread. It spread throughout Ukraine. So Ukrainians that were Ukrainians, not Russian Ukrainians or Russian-speaking Ukrainians or ethnic Russians, were starting to get their head filled with this ideology of Bandera. Bandera was an ethno-nationalist. What is an ethno-nationalist? That's what Nazis were. They were ethno-nationalists. They would ethnically cleanse what it was they wanted eradicated from their society. In the case of the Nazis, it was Jews. In the case of Ukrainians, it was Jews, Poles and Russians and anybody that wasn't Ukrainian, but especially Russians. When World War II was in full flood, it was the Eastern Ukraine Russians that took out the Western Ukraine Nazis. I've shown you evidence from the people speaking, the actual people that were there, actual former members of the 14th SS Waffen that were there, telling the story of what happened. I've exposed this. And now I'm showing you why there are so much problems in Ukraine. This is a tinderbox. Because the ethno-nationalists are bigger a problem than you think. The ethno-nationalists are a larger number than anybody thinks. And just like Germany in World War II, boom, all of a sudden, they will start destroying Russian people. They will start ethnically cleansing Russian-speaking people, whether they're Ukrainian or not. You speak Russian? Sorry, you're not Ukrainian enough. You will be exterminated. They will do a cleansing, and this is what is the problem. This cannot be denied. Oh, it won't happen again. These people are not like that. Really? One of the first things they did when the new parliament came in after the coup was take away the Russian language privileges. That was one of the first things. And all the people who were protesting about Kiev, and there was a lot of them in the southeastern regions, well, the Ukrainian government in Kiev turned the Ukrainian military on them and blew them to hell with heavy artillery, planes and tanks. And they did that for 8 years. But what they're not telling you is a lot of the members of the Ukrainian army deserted at that point and joined the Donetsk and Luhansk because their conscience said this was wrong. There was a void that suddenly appeared in the Ukrainian army, and the Ukrainian army was on its knees in 2015. That's when the Minsk agreement came in, because Merkel saw it. Guess what filled that void? An ideology. Azov, Aidan, they're all part of the same ideology, the Bandera ideology. And of course, we've got to talk about this man soon. Dmitry Yarosh. Dmitry Yarosh, who was the right sector, who was in charge of the SBU anti-terrorist, and he was involved in a lot of the torture and everything else. And if we remember that documentation I gave you from the OSCE, I'll read this bit for you. The information collected by the Foundation for Democracy Studies gives grounds to believe that the Ukrainian Armed Forces, VSU, which is the Volunteer Services of Ukraine, the National Guard and other military units of the Ministry of the Interior of Ukraine, as well as the Security Services of Ukraine, SBU, systematically and on purpose violate Article 13 of the European Convention on Human Rights that reads, "No one shall be subjected to torture or to inhumane or degrading treatment or punishment. The extent to which torture is being used and the fact that this is done systematically prove that torture is an intentional strategy of the said institutions authorized by their leadership." It went all the way to the top, people. All the way to the top. And the American government knew. And the American government are happy and in bed with this. But I'm going to do tomorrow about Dmitry Yarosh, because you need to know who he is and how dangerous a man he is. But what you're not going to believe are the people that actually finance this charming individual. Because at the moment, he is the advisor of the Ukrainian army and commander. He's the guy, basically, who's got Zelensky. He's the guy controlling Zelensky. Mark my words, that's the guy. And remember, they were never seen until the Maidan. And then all of a sudden, when the police brutally beat the people at the Christmas tree, which was all preset and done by a certain Victoria Nuland and her little friends within the government, the following day paramilitaries appeared with red and black armbands. This was the Trident. This was the right sector. In fact, I will read you something here. They call me a hawk in Trident. What is your personal story and what have you done with your life? I am the leader of the all-Ukrainian organization, Stefan Bandera Trident. I have been involved in public life for the past 25 years. I am from Dnipro in the Dnipro, I can't even pronounce it, Dnipro, okay, Oblast region. I raised the first blue and yellow flag in April 1989. These people are descendants and been indoctrinated by the very people we sent back after World War II. In other words, the evil ideology that the Nazis had, which was in conjunction with the 14th SS, what the OUN had, which is this ethnic cleansing ideology, we put back in to Ukraine after the war. America and England have so much blood on their hands. I shall leave you with that for today, and tomorrow we're going to talk about Mr. Dmitry Yarosh, and we're going to talk a little bit about his sponsors, because his sponsors are fascinating. Which then I would like to ask people like Mark Levin, considering he's one of the big blowhards and bloviators of wanting to start a war with Russia, when's he going to start goose-stepping? Because he is supporting an ideology that is pure evil. Mark Levin is pure evil, because if he believes in these people, he knows this history, if he knows this history, then he is pure evil. These people are sick. And like the other video I showed you today with John McCain, listen to those words again. I'm going to give you a blast from the past as well. A very famous speech from 1991. It'll be an interesting one for an eye-opener for you. Toodle pips.
Kleptocracy. The guys from the kleptocracy.